Okay, welcome to today's podcast episode where I have another amazing lady here to interview, and it's Makeda Alleyne, and she's a career coach for ambitious, successful professional women. And I'm so excited to having you today here. Welcome. Hello and welcome to the Successful, Sensitive and Intuitive Entrepreneur podcast. My name is Lydia Sophia Wilmsen and I am an intuitive success mentor for sensitive entrepreneurs. In this podcast, I speak about the challenges sensitive and intuitive entrepreneurs face. I offer you new perspectives and solutions, as well as experiences of other entrepreneurs. Plus, I speak about my personal experience of being a highly sensitive person who has successfully built and scaled 2 businesses. All of that with the goal to make you and your business even more successful in your very unique and authentic way. Have fun and enjoy.
Hey Lydia, super excited to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
And my first question, as always, is tell us a little bit more about yourself, what you do, where you come from, like the basic Makeda speech, basically.
Let's start with what I do. So as I said, I'm a career coach, but I work specifically with successful, high achieving, high performing professional women who, despite being in this, super good on paper career and jobs, they still feel like super unhappy, super unfulfilled, uninspired, demotivated, drained. They just want so much more. So I work with them specifically to get the courage to leave that job and actually go on to pursue a career that really lights them up on the inside and fills them with that inspiration and alignment that they so desperately want.
I love that. And how did you end up there? Like, how or why did you choose that yourself, that career path, working with those women?
People say that end up coaching yourself. And in some sense, that's kind of what happened. That was kind of my experience. So I'll give you a little bit of my background. So you can tell from the accent, I'm not from the UK. I am Bajan to the bone. I'm 100% Bajan, so I'm from Barbados. And I came over to the UK when I was 21. And after I did my master's, I was working here for probably about 15 years, a little bit over 15 years in the training, learning and development and professional development space. And as I rose through the ranks, rose through seniority, I was performing very well, I guess people would say, in terms of career wise. But then it got to a point at my last job where I just realized, like, this isn't it. Like, I'm in my 30s. I am so unhappy. I am so miserable. I'm so stressed out. I'm so overwhelmed. And even though I realized that at the time, I just didn't leave. I just stayed because at some point in time, over the years, because I'm a high achiever myself. So some point in time over the years, that had become my identity. So I was really attached to, my job title. I was really attached to my paycheck, to be honest, and the lifestyle that I could afford. I was really attached to being seen as the go-to expert and, leading a team. So that was massive for me. And I was really kind of getting my self-worth from that. So even though I was in this job where I started to realize that it just wasn't aligned with what I wanted to do anymore, and it got to the point that it was stressing me out so much that my body literally started to break down. I started to have panic attacks, anxiety, stress, overwhelm. And yet I stayed until I got my own wake-up call, which was essentially, let's just call it what it is, breakdown and burnout. Yeah, let's go breakdown and burnout. And got sent home for 5 weeks on doctor's orders with, severe stress, anxiety, and depression. And it really highlighted for me how you can know that something isn't right for you.
Yeah.
Know you want to do something else, but be scared shitless of actually making the move. So what I was lacking at the time was the courage. So kind of like taking that full circle, I recognized that there are so many other women in the position that I was in so many other women who are so attached to the identity of that they're getting through their job. And because they're so senior and because they have that money, it makes it very difficult. And they too are scared shitless. I hope I can say shitless on this podcast.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Feel free.
Scared shitless of actually making a move. So that's what I coach around. It's about getting that courage. It's about getting that confidence and overcoming those fears so you can actually take next step and make a change to your career. And that is whatever it is, whether you want to start a job, start a new business, rather, launch a side hustle, transition to a better company or completely pivot. It's having the courage to actually do that.
Yeah, and I remember that part of your own description or business description basically is this confidence part, like courage, confidence coach. And yeah, like what would you say? Like, you lacked that. So how did you find that courage? How did you find that, or how did you then build the confidence and the courage in yourself, and like basically what you help others to do now? Did you have like a specific strategy? Did you seek help? Did you just look back and figure it out? Okay, I just do the opposite of what I did before, or like, what is it? Give us some insights, please.
I remember one lady in particular, she literally cornered me into the kitchen to tell me how brave she thought I was. But at the time, I actually didn't feel brave. The reason that I decided to hand in my notice and I resigned without having anything lined up, and this isn't something that I necessarily recommend other people to do, but I did it because I recognized that the job was getting more out of me than I was getting out of the job. Okay. So in terms of building my confidence and building my courage, that all kind of happened once I handed in my notice and left that job. And I had space to really work on my own development. And I did that a lot through coaching because it's the recognition that my way, the Makeda way, which I thought was so great, the Makeda way wasn't working. The Makeda way led me to burnout. So, it gets to that point where you just have to recognize, what I know got me here. And if I want to do something else and do something different, well, I needed to get an external perspective, someone that can help me to think about things differently. So for me, confidence and courage. So what I learned, and kind of this is similar to what I work with my clients on, is I really had to break down the beliefs that I had about myself and the beliefs that I had about what I was capable of, who I am, and what I deserved, because those were the main things that kept me in that job for so much longer than it was serving me. So when I talk about beliefs, most people aren't rather able to just like kind of pinpoint, oh, these are my beliefs, because most beliefs, they live way, 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 way deep below the surface. And, they could have been formed, or most often rather, they're formed from childhood experiences. So I didn't even recognize some of the beliefs that I had about myself that were massively holding me back. Because on the outside, I had my shit together. I was making my money. I was, moved from Barbados to England, just like, I have my life together. So then what I discovered was these beliefs, and a big one for me personally was that I'm not good enough, that I'm a bad person, that I'm not smart enough, which is
crazy, right?
It's so ridiculous. It's so ridiculous. So it was understanding the beliefs that I had about myself that were impacting my thoughts. It was impacting how I felt about myself. And it was therefore impacting the actions I was taking and the decisions I was making. And, the actions and decisions that you take, well, that shows up and is reflected in your life. So the outcomes, essentially. So when it comes to the beliefs, I always say, like, beliefs inform your thoughts inform your feelings inform your actions, and your actions inform your outcomes. And then, of course, your outcome, well, that's going to inform your belief. So it's just one massive self-fulfilling prophecy. So that was the first thing that I did, figured out the beliefs I had that had been holding me back, and then really put in quite intense work to shift them. So come up with new beliefs about myself that were not necessarily, like sky high Instagram worthy kind of quotes about, I kick ass. It's just like, okay, relax. It was actually, what was important was to not come up with, but to create more balanced and more healthy beliefs about myself, which were grounded in reality. So, okay, I had a belief that I wasn't smart enough. Where's the evidence to support that? There's no evidence. I have I'm just going to brag on myself. I
Go,
have
go, go.
I have multiple scholarships, coming up through my academic time. I have my master's degree, my bachelor's degree. I have so many diplomas. I was the head of department. There was nothing to substantiate this belief I had that I wasn't smart enough. And then that was the thing that was holding me back from doing what I actually wanted to do. So in terms of building confidence, figuring out the beliefs that you have about yourself that are holding you back, and then really working on shifting them and changing them into, well, firstly, dissolving the ones that aren't serving you, and then shifting them to new, empowering, balanced beliefs that are going to spur you on to doing what it is that you actually want to do. And when it comes to shifting beliefs, that shit is not easy because some of these things that be running through your mind, that's been there from childhood, that
From
you're not smart
ages.
enough. Yeah, that came from my primary school and, some
Mm.
bullying stuff when I was in primary school. And I massively internalized it. So I'm talking about 30 years of stuff that's been kind of running through my mind. And these stories I've been rehearsing. So it was about integrating them on a daily basis, so that when I was triggered or I was in a difficult situation, then that new belief, that became my go-to, my default way of thinking. And very slowly it went from kind of a more healthy balance to nobody. Sorry, that's not great for audio, but I'm clapping. Nobody is going to stop me. Then it's kind of like shifted to that more empowered, I've got this covered kind of thinking. And I'd say the other thing that was super important, because for me, the difference between confidence and courage. So, confidence for me is about your belief in your capabilities. So, your belief in what you can do and trusting in yourself and trusting that you can actually do it. And for me, courage is about that willingness to actually take action, even in the face of fears. So for me, that's the slight difference. So with courage, a massive part of what I did with my coaches, because I've worked with more than one brilliant coaches, coach, developing that courage for me was about changing. Well, it's about two things. Well, the first one was massively increasing my tolerance for discomfort and my tolerance for fear. And
I
this is a
love
big
that.
one with my clients as well. So if I use myself as an example, 15 years in training and development and in L&D, I've become very accustomed. I'd created a bit of a comfort zone. And sure, I was bold and I was brave and I was courageous at work, but when it came to doing new things, that's when the fear kind of kicked in. So if you want to be courageous, you can't just kind of be like, yes, let me say an affirmation every morning. And then no, courage doesn't work like that. You actually have to take action. And it's about taking action, even when you feel scared AF, and even when those fears are really bubbling to the surface. And the way you would do that, for example, is to expose yourself to the very things that you are scared of. And people might be like, oh, but I'm not scared of anything. Trust me, you are. And yes, I'm a career coach. And, it might not be career related. It might be one of the things you've been scared to do is, let's say, start by exercising because maybe you've gained a lot of weight and, you feel really, self-conscious about your. Okay, well, that's what we're going to do. So it doesn't necessarily have to be within the remit of the career. The whole idea of increasing your tolerance for discomfort and increasing your tolerance for fear is that whatever that fear is, whatever it is that makes you feel uncomfortable, it's about actively going out and doing that. And the moment you do and you prove to yourself, oh, look at that, I did not fall apart. Oh, look about, I can live to tell the tale, the world didn't crumble down. And then you start to, kind of like brush your shoulders off, start feeling more powerful because you've proven to yourself that you can face your fears. And as I say, you come out swinging. So that's kind of what I see as the difference between confidence and courage. They definitely go hand in hand, particularly when it comes to your career, because you need to believe. You need to believe and trust in yourself that you can actually have the career that you want. And then you have to have the courage to follow through, to consistently take action, to not wait until you have it all figured out and feel safe, but to take that action despite feeling
Despite
scared.
the fear. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Thank you for sharing. And I wanted to go a little bit further back to that point. Like I have two or three things I wanted to like go a little bit deeper into. The first thing was that you mentioned, I think that was a powerful shift already, or a powerful like different perspective of when you have your negative beliefs, and you explained the whole cycle, how it goes. So you have your negative beliefs, and then you think, oh, now I have to go full swing into the other direction. So I think that was already like a huge hint for the audience to say, no, you don't have to directly turn it into the opposite. Like find something which has to do with reality still, and go like in tinier steps, because like it's actually being compassionate with yourself. Like if you think I'm stupid, even though there is no evidence, I'm not smart enough. And that's so funny, because I think a lot of freakingly smart people have that. It's so strange. So if that is yours, then don't go into like, I'm hyper smart or something. Like find something in between, like make it easy on yourself, because it's already difficult to change beliefs. It's already something like, what the heck are we doing here? So, I thought
So I was
that
just going
was
to
super
say that
interesting.
when you try to jump that far, your brain essentially just says no.
Yeah.
I am not buying it, which is why, for that very reason, it's taking it step by step and coming up with a more realistic, healthy, and balanced belief.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the evidence part as well, like we tell ourselves those stories, and then to see like, actually, it's like a tiny part in me, like a small child part who thinks that, and it doesn't have to do with our reality now. So I love that example from yourself, like probably that this thought came from whatever, primary school, and now finding the evidence of that new belief you want to integrate. So I wanted to ask you perhaps a question, because you work with especially those people who are like highly professional, you have like high driven careers. What do you see as some of the main limiting beliefs? Is it the not enough, not smart enoughness? What is the main stuff you find with them, with your clients?
I would say, because the women I work with are so successful, the fear often comes up in terms of a belief that you can't be as successful doing something you love. And that kind of goes back to what I said in terms of the identity. So it's just that you've become so attached to that. And then it's just like, well, can I be as successful doing something that I actually love? So that's a super common one.
Why do you think that is? Like it could be, do they fear they can't replicate success? Or is it because they think, oh, that's something I love, and then it comes to worthiness, like, but I'm not worthy to actually be deserving of something when I love doing that? Or
I
what
think
is
there
it?
is some element of worthiness in it, but because the women that I work with want to make a change to their career. So when I say change to their career, I mean, um, let's say they're in a full-time role and they want to start their own business or start a side hustle, for example. Or let's say they have 15 years experience within marketing and now they want to make a switch to, I don't know, app design or website design or something like that. So it's because what tends to come up is because their success has been within a certain area, then it's, well, I'm only capable within this remit. And for that very reason, that's why one of the big things that often gets the biggest impact is almost taking them out of that box. So I say like hoisting them or yanking them out of that box, where essentially they're kind of like blinkered of, this is all that I'm good at. I can only succeed when I do this, or because of my experience, I can only apply my skills in this way. So it's almost like yanking them out of that blinkered box and getting them to almost like look down on themselves and see, oh, wait a minute, I can use my skills in this way. Or wait a minute, I feel uncertain about starting a new business. But look at all these other times when I faced uncertainty and I was fine. Or look at all these other times when I didn't have a guarantee of success and I didn't fall apart. So it's about really getting them to see what it is that they're capable of. Because I think, well, the question was, what do I think? What do I think causes that fear? And I think it's that um, familiarity and comfort and safety that very often you're in, particularly if you've risen through the ranks within a particular sector. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes total sense. Yeah. I love that. It's like a little bit from the NLP concept of like chunking up. They are so focused in like inside there, and then to get them out and look from above and find the common characteristics, which are not like, or their skills, which are not only like in this tiny little work environment, but they are like part of their personality almost. I love that. Yeah.
I love that you said part of their personality, because that exactly is what it is. It's like, it's already in you. It's already in you. It's just believing in that and feeling that power and then leveraging that to do what it is that they actually want to do.
Yeah, no, I love that. And the other thing then that you brought up was this differentiation between confidence and courage. And I love that, like confidence, believing in yourself and making all those belief changes, or what we just talked about, like you have this in you and like now you see it. And then courage as of like taking action. And I love that you gave the example of like, that does not even have to do with your job. You can take action in a totally different way. And I guess there it's the same with, you don't even have to take like freaking big steps. It might be like a tiny move to just get acquainted with taking courage. So I guess, or?
Yeah, no, 100%. That's like if you are scared to go outside, scared to leave the house, not necessarily agoraphobia, but I know like some people, actually it's something that I struggled with in the past, find it difficult to kind of go outside and go for walks and, kind of see their home as their kind of safe space. Then, if that's your fear, you're not going to go from that to, I don't know, let's go to Notting Hill Carnival. It's just like, relax. It's relaxed.
Let's do a world tour, a world trip, trip around the world.
It's like, okay, well, maybe today I put the bins out. Okay, I survived that. Tomorrow I walk to the end of the street. The day after that, maybe I go around the block. It's about, and every time you do it, you prove to yourself that you can. And not only that you can, but then you start to trust yourself. Well, I did that yesterday. I didn't fall apart. Okay, let me try something else. So it's not building that trust and really starting to feel that power that you have it handled. So it's not going from, from A to Z in, a week's time, for example.
Yeah, I love that. And it's really like building a muscle, right? Like a courage muscle, like one step at a time. And shifting at the things that are already working. And I think, or I guess that the people you work with and you are yourself, like they come from a very perfectionist background. So doing the things you do or your clients do like in a perfect way. And then even then, I think it's beautiful to start looking at things, at tiny things that you do good. Because I think a perfectionist can never see, wow, I have done this in a really great way. Like you always find that stuff which is not perfect yet. So I think what you just described, it's actually not only for people who want to shift careers, it's for all kind of people who are high achieving and over deliver constantly and still think it's not enough or it's not perfect enough. Or?
Agree. It's like, give yourself permission to just be good. You don't have to be perfect, or just give yourself permission to try. And that's pretty much, you don't have to go to the extreme all the time. I always say progress over perfection. So it's about choosing that as opposed to putting those really high, really unrelenting, almost kind of like burden some kind of demands or expectations on yourself, which can actually be totally counterproductive and then cause you to just shut down and not take any action.
Yeah, I guess that's what happens. Like people who think, oh, I'm doing everything perfect, I give my best. And what can like be really worst case scenario is that in the end you don't do anything anymore. Like you never get that stuff done and you never shift your career, for example. You stay in this freaking job forever because yeah, you look at this perfect thing instead of, what did you say, progress over perfection. So I love that.
Mm.
So was this also your path then? Like all the things we talked about, these were also things you started to implement, for example, to look for progress over perfection?
Very much so. As you know, I'm a massive high achiever myself. I used to say I'm a recovered perfectionist, but I'm just like, let's not front. I'm like a recovering perfectionist because
Love
there's
this.
always some things that kind of flare up for me. But yeah, no, that was very much my experience as well. So increasing my tolerance for discomfort, changing my belief system. And one of the things actually that I want to mention, because it almost comes before that, is the very first thing that I did. And it's the very first thing that I do with my clients as well. And that is creating a vision for my life. It's like, what is, and not a goal, a vision. It's
Vision.
like, okay, the situation I was in is that, okay, I've resigned. What are we doing, Makeda? Like, what's the plan? Not what's the goal, not what we're doing in 6 months, but what's the vision for my life? This isn't what you want to do anymore. So, what type of life am I trying to create? If I was 100 years old and I was at my 100th birthday party, which would be amazing. Um, yeah, bring on the champagne. And I was looking back on my life, or I was giving a speech, what would be the one thing that I would be so gutted if I didn't do? So figuring out the vision, what is it I wanted to achieve, and what does success and fulfillment look like me going forward? What do I want more of in my life? What do I want less of in my life? What are the values? What are the personal values that I really not even want to live by, but I have to live by? So it's creating that super long-term vision. And I say the difference between a goal and a vision is, a vision is like a lighthouse. So it's like this beam in the distance that you're going towards. And then your values, that's your compass. So that's the direction that you're gonna take to get there, because there's no use getting to that lighthouse if you get there in a totally misaligned way that leaves you feeling like shit. And then your goals are the steps you take to get there. So a vision, a lot of people, myself included, I had goals. I had career goals, I had weight goals, I had health goals, I had money goals, but I didn't have a long-term vision for my life. And I think if most people are being honest, most people don't have a long-term vision for their life, because it's so hard on top of, you're trying to exercise, eat fruit and veg, look after your edges, like look after a house. And it's just like creating that long-term vision. Most people don't have that. But when I was able to create it, and let me just pause for a second to say, I didn't create any old vision. My vision is a big, bold, badass, ridiculous, like I just went for it. And that's also what I encourage my clients to do. I call it's the framework I use called bold vision. And it's brave, obnoxious, linked to your values and drives you to action. So that's what
Love
bold
it.
stands for. So it's about creating that vision. And then it's like, okay, this is the type of life I want to live. This is what's important to me. How does my career then align with this type of life? And that was super important. And a part of the vision as well, or linked to the vision, is what I call my big why. Okay, why do I want to live this type of life? Is this like, why is it important to me? Is essentially what the big why is. Why is this so important to me? What would having this vision and living this vision allow me to do? And once I figured that out, then that's when the clarity about my career really started to come through, particularly with my values. My one of my big values is authenticity, and that kept coming up time and time again. And it was just like, I gotta work for myself. Like I want to do my own thing. I don't want to be boxed in. When I was thinking about my speech at my 100-year-old totally turned up party, I was like, I want to be talking about or looking at the legacy that I created, for my family, like generational wealth. And that again led me to, starting my own business. So it's about having that big vision and then figuring out how your career aligns with it. And it can be a little bit scary sometimes when you realize, oh goodness, the path that I'm on is not going to lead me to the vision that I have for my life. But for most of my clients, it is super inspiring because what you're doing then is open your mind up to all of these freaking amazing possibilities of what your life could look like instead of thinking about, worst case scenarios. Just like, I could be living this life that is, allows me to have time with my partner and my children and to travel and the freedom to, work from home. I know for some of my clients, that's a big one. So that influences their career. So it's about figuring out your big why it's important to you, and then aligning your career with that. I
I
have
love
no
that.
idea if I answered your question.
Yeah, I think so. I also forgot my question, so it's all good. And usually I ask like, oh, what are your best tips and what are you, like most juicy, but you already bring them without me having to ask. So all good.
Look at that.
Oh, yeah, I love that. Because I really think not many people do that. Like vision, aligning your career with your vision. Like I think huge parts of population, they just work for money and totally forgetting. There was a study once, where they said they asked like people on their deathbed what they were regretting. And all the people were regretting basically not going for what they wanted, not asking whatever they were like the one girl they liked, not going for the career, not risking things. So no one ever said like, I shouldn't have done like the risky thing. Never ever.
Yeah.
So why don't we listen to those people who
Yeah.
tell it to us, Oh, so I love that, aligning like vision with career. Yeah. And going for what you really want, because you will only regret later on that you didn't do it.
Exactly. Because you talked about what are the thoughts that kind of, the limiting beliefs that my clients have. And a big one is kind of like, what if I fail? What if it doesn't work out? Yeah. And it's kind of like, but what if it does?
Yeah.
What if I crash and burn? But what if you fly?
Yeah.
It's almost that, not almost, but it is that safety mechanism that's inside of us where we think, I need to obsess over worst case scenarios, because if I proactively plan that or focus on those, then I can stop them from happening. But we all know like that's not really how life works. So that same energy that you're pouring into obsessing about all the things that could go wrong, you could be pouring that exact same energy into obsessing over the beautifully delicious possibilities of what could go so freaking amazingly well. And, thinking about how that would impact each and every area of your life. So that's kind of the shift. And also the how you can make it work. So instead of like how to avoid worst case scenarios, how can you make what you actually want to happen actually happen? That's a much more productive use of your time, and leaves
So
you feeling
much.
much more inspired as opposed to overwhelmed and,
Yeah.
let's say, shit. Yeah.
Yeah, shit. Feeling like shit. Piece of shit. Yeah. I love that. And I know you're also rather an introverted soul, and you do incorporate your intuition nowadays much more. You know that the podcast is geared towards like the more introverted, sensitive kind of folks, and people who want to shift more into like connecting with their intuition. How was your shift from being like an overworking perfectionist, basically a high achiever, into listening and coming from like the scientific world, from this Western world of like career, go, direction, goal, achieve, towards like intuition, which is much more silent, much more trust based. It's not that it tells you something and then you have like 10 different studies which tell you this is going to work. It's like it's a totally different paradigm. Like how did you do that, or how do you do that? Big
I'll
question, I know.
be, as we say, like 400. I'll keep it 100, totally honest. Um, I would say that only truly clicked for me last year in 2020, because yes, I had the courage to start my own business when I left my last job, but the same high achieving, pushing, perfectionist tendencies, I just apply that to my business, because one of the beliefs that I hadn't noticed was holding me back was that I had to do so much in order to see success. And your podcast is aimed specifically at highly sensitive and intuitive entrepreneurs, and a lot of entrepreneurs will know from experience that when you start out, there is so much information, like just within the coaching industry where I exist. For example, you know, should you do webinars? Should you do one-to-one? Should you do a group program? You need to do paid ads. You need to do organic marketing. Your LinkedIn post should look like that. And it just became overwhelming. And I was, following this technique and then following that technique and going back and forth and kind of working myself into a total frenzy, to be honest, constantly pushing and constantly doing, and then getting really frustrated with myself when I wasn't getting the results that I wanted. So my experience of leaning into my intuition, it really started from it being highlighted to me by my coach that I was addicted to doing. I was addicted to pushing, doing, performing more. That had actually become my comfort zone. So we talk about increasing your tolerance for discomfort. So what she challenged me to do was to relax. Relax. Okay, this is you think you're really busy, take a week off. Instead of pushing, why not, make yourself a nice breakfast, go for a walk. And to say that I resisted it would be an understatement, because in my head, I just kind of wanted to shout at her, like, no, I can't get anything done unless I keep pushing. So what she really helped me to do was to realize that I could, and that was just a limiting belief that I had. So in terms of switching, because we talked about switching from limiting beliefs, I went from I have to push and I have to keep going in order to see success, or I have to hustle, talk about hustle mentality, to my in between step was I am willing to believe that I can see success from a place of ease. Now, I had to throw in you willing to believe, because I did not believe it. I was just like, okay, sure. But it was willing to believe initially, and then actively doing things that made me uncomfortable, which was maybe only working 2 hours a day, or not working on a Friday, or turning off the notifications from LinkedIn on my phone so I don't get constant reminders. I'm pushing myself outside of my comfort zone to just relax and trust that I can still seek success. So that started my process of leaning into intuition. And that week when I actually did that, I got sales through. I was just like, oh, wait a minute, maybe there's something to this ease, because I wasn't posting like 2-3 times a day on LinkedIn and I still got sales that week. So that was my almost introduction to ease and not pushing. And I think when I had that as evidence, then I started to explore my intuition more. And this might sound really silly, but as someone that likes to plan, I would go for walks some mornings and I would like plan my route out. So I then literally would start going for walks and then just kind of like, where does my body? I'm laughing at myself. I'm like, this sounds a little bit, but it's just like, where does my body want to go? And just like, oh, that street looks nice. Just let's go down there. What's happening? And just make that right turn. And it might sound really silly, but that for me was really like, instead of planning everything, just trust myself, because I had lost touch with my intuition. I wasn't hearing it as clearly as I guess I used to hear it before. Or maybe I just wasn't paying attention to it. So it was actually kind of learning to tap back into it. And then I love that feeling of not planning as much and just trusting in myself and trusting in what I'm being called to do. So I started to lean into that more. And for me now, what that looks like is actively asking for intuitive guidance when it comes to writing my content, when it comes to what I'm offering my clients, when it comes to what I'm doing each day, is actually asking for guidance and trusting that. That's the courage piece, because remember, courage is actually following through. It's like, okay, I hear what you're saying. oh, let me still knock out 6 hours of work. It's like, no, just like today is a Netflix binge watch Bridgerton kind of drink Prosecco day. So that's what we're doing. So it was about learning to tap into it and then having the courage to actually trust it and take action. Because if then you're tapping into it and you're doing F all, then actually you actually start to feel a bit icky and disappointed in yourself. So it was a combination of those things.
I love that. Yeah, I love that you bring the whole confidence, courage thing into that as well. Like you can actually
Mm,
apply it to anything. The one thing is to get the confidence of like, okay, I give it a try. Like I start believing
mm,
in myself. I trust my intuition. And the courage thing is to actually do it then. Like otherwise it's you only do like only you
mm,
only go half the way. So of course you don't end up where you want to end up
mm,
because you stop in the middle. So yeah, taking the courage to then following through on whatever your freaky
mm,
intuition brings up in that
mm.
moment. And yeah, that's the
It's about
challenging part. I
trusting
love
yourself
that.
because like when you tap into it, it kind of goes back to what I said in terms of it's already in you. You already have that inner knowledge, and so often we can be kind
Yeah.
of like tuned to thinking, oh well, this expert knows better, or this other person, look how well they're doing. That's what I should be doing. I should be following that framework. But it's like screw that. Just because it's working for Jack doesn't mean it's going to work for. Sorry, I just made that out. Cracked me up. Doesn't mean it's going to work for Jill. So it's just like, what do you want to do? Because if I was to take a super kind of far left, a worst case scenario approach, it would be if something isn't going to work out, if I'm going to fail, I'm going to be fail doing what I want to do. Do you know what I mean? I know it's a kind of slightly twist on it, but it's just like, what do you want to do? What is it that gets you excited? How do you want to turn up? What is it that you feel passionate about? And when it comes to being an entrepreneur, it's learning to trust that. I feel like if that's like a massive thing, if not, you can feel so overwhelmed by all of the advice that comes at you from every direction. So that's a massive one.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, it's beautiful. And also what I said, what I also wanted to point out, I think was a good, like everything is good. And I wanted to point out that you said, what did I want to say? You went from, yeah, trusting intuition and yeah, probably it was already there and then leaning into that again, letting go of planning a little bit. And I think what most of people forget, especially from like driven entrepreneurs or driven career people, high leadership roles, whatever. And when you then like approach them with this idea of like, lean a little bit more into your intuition or what would happen? Um, they think if they let go of planning, everything is going to crash, and they totally forget that they come from the
Mm,
far extreme end. So also when they lean into intuition, they are still not like those people who live like in just a
mm,
pure intuitive base. They are still planning half or like 90% of their life. So actually this fear of it's the same with very heart-centered people who then think like, oh, if I charge money, I'm going to become money greedy. Like you will never end up there because
so
you're
far.
on this far end. And what you're doing now is a little bit leaning more into the middle, but you haven't even crossed to the other side. So you will never get there.
Such a good
So
point.
I
Yeah.
like that you said of to just, yeah, lean into that because you will still be not even in the
Not
close
even.
to the middle of that. Yeah. So just give it a go and you will still do lots of planning and you will still be like very, direct, like in a
Mm.
specific
And the
direction.
only way
So
you can prove for yourself whether it's going to work or how it's going to turn out is by trying it. So hence what I was saying, like
doing
I'm
it.
willing to believe that I can see success from a place of ease. Okay, well,
Yes.
let me try just relaxing for 2 weeks and see what happens. Oh shit, things are happening. I got sales. So it's you actually have to practice it and see, as opposed to making assumptions or fortune telling, as I call it, about how things are going to work out if you change how you operate.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally love that because, like for many people, that really helps if it's so difficult to do the uncomfortable thing and to just say,
Mm,
okay, let's do it for 1 week. If you hate it, if it's horrible, you have my permission and the angel's permission and God's permission and
mm,
whoever to go back. Just give it a
mm.
go for a week or 2 weeks. And usually the people then figure out, like, somehow that's quite good. Like,
Yeah.
let's keep going, But so I always tell them also when I work with them
Mhm.
on target energy or something, then like, oh, this doesn't work. And now I'm not I'm not satisfied. I don't find anything. No, I don't want to do that. And then like, let's just try this for 2 weeks. And after 2 weeks, it's like, my whole life, I'm so satisfied with whatever. I think that, yeah, I knew.
Exactly.
Ah, oh, I love that. Okay, what else did I want to ask you? Perhaps just, I guess, from your vast knowledge, just some more one, two, three juicy tips when it comes to confidence, self-belief, courage. Either something to do or a perspective shift. Just give us your best.
The first thing that came to my mind, look at me trusting my intuition. The first thing that came to my mind was around fear, because that's a big thing that holds people back. That keeps them in the job, that keeps them stuck, that keeps them settling, that keeps them, not living up to their potential is fear. And I think the tricky thing with fear is that a lot of people don't recognize that it's there. So a lot of people won't necessarily say, do you know what? I'm scared I'm going to fail. Some people do, but for a lot of people, what actually happens is they make excuses, or they procrastinate, or they break commitments to themselves to do the work on their career, or they start deprioritizing their needs and put everyone and everything above themselves. And that is coming from a place of fear, but they don't necessarily recognize it as fear. So I see everything from fear of failure, fear of success, fear of uncertainty, um just low fear of the unknown, for example, fear of change that holds people back. And I'd say if I was to give a tip, it would be to try to identify what it is that you're actually scared of. Because if you know what it is that you want to do next and you know why you want to do it, yet you're procrastinating and not following through, figure out why that is. And if you can't figure it out, get a coach, someone to help you figure it out. Because when you replay in your head, so often you are coming up with just the surface level stuff like, I don't have enough time, or I'm super busy this quarter, or I need to hit this deadline. But when that goes on for 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, a year, there's something else at play. So figure out what the fear is and name it. Name it, because you can't tackle something unless you actually name it, unless you acknowledge that it's there. And I'd say with fear, um, fear is always there to teach you something. It's always there to show you something that you need to work on. Fear of failure. Okay, well, what do you think it means about you if you fail? What do you think that's reflecting? Fear of success. Okay, why are you putting a limit on how much, success, joy, happiness you think you can achieve? So it's always an indicator of something else that you need to work on. So rather than, I see kind of like two main responses to fear. One is kind of almost like paralyzed with fear and like take zero action, almost like head in the sand
Mm-hmm.
kind of situation. Yeah, freeze,
Like
exactly. And
freeze.
the other
Yeah.
one, the other one is, which every time I hear it, I kind of like roll my eyes dramatically, which is like, fuck fear. And I'm just like, okay, relax. And none of those techniques work, because one, if you're freezing, you're not taking action. Hello to staying stuck, not addressing the issue. And then the problem with the whole like fuck fear mentality is that it's not realistic. You might be kind of like really revved up for maybe 1 week, and okay, let me get a CV expert in to update my CV, or update my LinkedIn profile, or maybe I'm working on my new business logo. But those fears are going to come out because you haven't addressed them. So it's unrealistic to
Yeah.
be like, pretend the fear isn't there, but it's also unrealistic. Exactly. It's also unrealistic to try to Again, I'm like Instagram quote, fuck fear. I'm just like, okay, no. So acknowledge your fear is there, name it, and then figure out what it is that is there to teach you. And then as we talked about courage, which is the whole idea of increasing your tolerance for it. So practice taking action despite the fears. So practice taking action in the face of fears, because that's how you prove to yourself, like time and time again, that you can trust yourself, that you can trust yourself to take action and not fall apart. You can trust yourself to fail, possibly, and you know, the world isn't going to come crumbling down. Beyonce will still be singing, your ex-boyfriend will still be your ex, like nothing, the world isn't going to change and stop
Yeah.
spinning on its axis. So it's about practicing taking action despite the fear. So when it comes to, as I said when I began, people told me, "Oh, you're so brave." Like when I left my job, and I had a recent client on our first call, she literally said, like, "I just want to be brave, Makeda. I just want to be brave." Um, but the difference between women who are super successful, high earning, but unhappy. So the women that actually leave their job, the women that leave their job to start a business, switch to a better company, whatever they leave to do, and the women who choose to stay, the difference between those two groups of people isn't the absence of fear. As I said, I was scared shitless. And everything in me was telling me, you better find yourself another corporate job because you've got bills to pay, sis. The difference isn't the absence of fear. The difference is the willingness and the courage to take action despite the fear. So if you're in a position now, you talk about advice, if you're in a position now where you are just like, I cannot believe I am starting 2021 in the exact same job. I am coming home from work. I am drained of all energy. My partner, my children are getting, maybe 50% of me. I am literally praying for the weekend to come. If you find yourself in that position, then totally lost my train of thought. And I was on such a roll. Where am I going with
um,
that?
it was about they are the same groups, like acting
Oh, yes, I'm
despite the
with you now.
fear.
Yeah.
And if you come home,
If you find yourself praying for the weekend to come, the solution isn't to wait until you feel 100% certain. The solution isn't to wait until everything is just right. It's the right timing. The solution isn't to, wait until there are no unknowns. That isn't the solution, because fear is always going to exist. The solution is to learn and to understand how you can disempower your fear so that you can start taking action regardless. So you can show up scared and still follow through. Because courage, confidence, that's a gift you receive after you've done the scary thing. So that's the difference between the women who are leaving their, well paid senior jobs and going after the career they want, and those that are deciding to settle.
yeah. I love that, Makeda. And I just wrote down the first thing, like this total honesty with yourself, like to be honest, there is a fear, to address the things. And I think this is already, yeah, could already be a first step to deal with fear, to see I'm at least addressing my fear. So yes, there is a lot of fear, and there is already courage in just looking at the fear, like when we look for the good things. And then, yeah, this whole mentality of fuck fear, like the hustlers, like fuck fear, just go. And yeah, you can do that for some time, but it will kick you in the ass. It will come back. It will get bigger, and it might come through a totally different like area, needle thing. It won't necessarily come from then where you are fucking fear. It comes from somewhere else then. So that's, yeah, I love that you mentioned that, and that there is a healthy way to approach that and make fear not into your enemy but into your friend, because fear is just something to teach you, and you, like, until you're not willing to learn the
Time and
teachings,
time
it will come
again.
back.
Fair
Seemingly it's
one,
your
use
enemy.
zero.
Yeah. So I love that. And to help people understand, yeah, you have to start. Like, again, not the perfectionist thing, like wait until you're ready and you have figured your life out when you're 100 and then take to action. No, it is like, yeah, you go now and figure it out on the way. And I think you're a perfect example of that, like what you shared, like leaving your home country, then leaving your job, all of that. So, yeah, I love all of that. I would say we have basically, like, we could keep on talking. However, we have basically approached, the 1 hour mark where I want to keep it. I loved talking to you. There is so much in here. Like, it's massive. So much value for the audience. Any last thoughts you want to leave us with? Or do you say like, no, I gave you all
everything. But don't forget who you are. I work specifically with women. But I'm just like, women, like, don't settle. Like, you deserve so much. And everything you want, as cheesy as it sounds, is on the other side of fear. So we're not settling in 2021, not a chance. And we're not believing that we can't be successful doing a job and career we want. I rebuke that shit. I'm just like, you can 100% be successful doing something that you love. So that's what I would leave with your beautiful, amazing audience.
Yeah. Thank you so much for your time, Makeda. It was such a joy. It was very much fun. I knew that from the beginning. And until the next time, I would say.
Bye, guys.
Did you like this podcast episode? Then I would be super, super grateful if you gave me a 5-star rating and review on iTunes. Super helpful. And please subscribe to the podcast and share it with people who you know can benefit from it. You can find all links to my social media profiles, my website, and contact form in the show notes. And whenever you're ready to take a next step, and that means you want to live a life of more on all levels, then send me a message with where you want to go and what is keeping you where you are, like what keeps you stuck at the moment. And then I'll get back to you as soon as possible. Thank you for listening, and until the next episode, much love to you, Lydia.